Hi, today is
So
17th June, and in this meeting, we are discussing the issue that says at group level application setting for shared runners. So there was some confusion going on in the issue discussion, and this meeting is to sort them out. And Fabio, go ahead.
yeah, so I'm going to demonstrate what is the difference by keeping the same code as is today and only flipping the application setting for enable shared runners from true to false and see what kind of difference we actually have when we create a new project. So I'm going to share the screen. So this is on GitLab.com. Okay, so and I actually have here access to the console where I actually show that the application setting for shared runners enabled is currently set to true. Okay, and so what happened with this is that this setting only controls what is the default behavior when creating a new project. Okay, so if I created like a new group, and these by default has a new group has like a shared runners enabled by default. This is not controlled by that application setting. It's always default to true. So at the moment, there's no way of making this defaulting to false. Okay. But when we create the project, and this is the project inside the same group, by default is created with enabled shared runners because of the project setting. Okay, there is only a little caveat, like if we disable this and then create a project, the project will have disabled shared runners because it's enforced at group level.
Okay.
But if we are creating a new group and then adding a new project in it, by default it will be disenabled and then the project will be enabled at project level.
Okay. So one change is, sorry.
So I'm going to show you what happened if we change the application setting. Okay. So on my local GDK, I actually disabled shared runners. Okay. So the current shared runners enable is set to false. Okay. And when I create a project, a group and then a project inside it, what I get is this is the group that I just created, and it has, when you go to the settings and go to runner at the group level is always enabled because again, it's enabled by default. But when we go to the project, this one, and we go to CI/CD settings and look at the runners, we see these are disabled now because the application setting is used to set by default the disabled. Yeah. Okay. But and again, like in the example before, if at project level, if at group level we disable shared runner, when we were creating this project, it was going to be disabled anyway because it's enforced at group level. But if it's not enforced at group level, it will be using the application setting.
Okay.
Now, what happened with this one is that this is disabled by default, but a user can say, actually, I want to use shared runners, so I want to enable this for this project. So it's easy to enable because it's allowed at project at the group level. Sorry, the group level has shared runner enabled, but the project level is disabled by default. For that case, you can change this to enabled, and you can use the shared runners. But by default, when you create a new CI, I won't use any shared runners. So this is the behavior that we end up with if we just change the application setting.
Okay, and what happens? So I understood all of this, and one question that I have is, let's say it's disabled at application level, enabled at group level, and that allows me to enable that on project level if I want it to.
Yes.
But by default, it will come like disabled.
Yes.
So when I enable at project level, does it enable at application level too? Like,
so if I enable, no, the application level is basically used as default. So
okay, so it's not
which
a
one is the default?
gatekeeping.
But no, it's like when we create a new project, what default value should we put for shared runners
Okay,
enabled? So we will use from application settings. It's only used when
got
we
it.
create a new project. It's not used for anything else. It's not enforced, or if we change the application setting, will only impact new projects being created.
Okay, got it.
It will not even
Got
have
it.
like an impact on existing projects.
That's good. And in this issue, what would be the front end work involved?
Well, if this behavior is acceptable, there is no work we have to do. We only need to
Right.
get an application, like a GitLab instance administrator to change the application setting. I don't know if that will be a SRE or somebody with administrator access.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I was trying to, yeah.
In that case, if we want to do it, whenever we decide to enable this, we just need to open a request to infrastructure to disable shared runners at application setting.
Okay, so I'm making note of this in the agenda document as well, which
Yeah.
for the infrastructure to disable at application level.
Yeah.
This sounds very like, I think the easiest approach to tackle this problem.
Yeah. So my question is, what is the goal we want to achieve? Is that we want to avoid the people by default use shared runners, like because the other approach we had discussed, like what if we control the group level setting, which by default is always true, but there's no way of changing it today. But let's say we want the group level to also use the application setting value, right? So in that case, if the
Right.
application setting is set to false, okay, we don't not only have default disable shared runners, but we will also have group level. So if I go here and disable at group level, every new group will have this setting.
Right.
Disabled, and no projects under this group or no subgroups can enable shared runners unless this is allowed. Okay, so this by default will be this configuration. But when we then look at the project level, we end up by default the configuration is this, and you're not able to enable shared runners. You need to ask somebody who maintains the top level group
Right.
to
So
actually
I'm reading the, yeah,
either
I'm reading
enable
the
shared
problem to
runners.
solve.
Yeah.
And so this says today shared runners are enabled by default. We want to be able to disable this, and some application owners may want to control this at group level and impact the way it is inherited down. So technically, we have this capability today to control at group level. And it is not very clear here that if we want this to restrict this feature at group level itself, so that like it becomes like a person or a user has to go through at least one step of approval to be able to use runners. Because right now with the workflow that we're providing, it's just a matter of enabling it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's at the project level.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
also, I feel like that if we want to change the behavior of default behavior for group level runners, I think reusing the same application setting, I'm not sure it would be the right approach, because we end up having this very strict sort of behavior if we also use group level settings to be to be defined by the application setting. I feel like we need to have like a different column in the application setting that says group shared runners enabled. So you can decide you want to have group level enabled by default, but project level disabled. You want to have both of them disabled, both of them enabled, because then you can't have either one or the other. From an administrator perspective, you either have all of them, everything enabled by default, or everything disabled by default. You don't have like a middle way, unless we introduce a new application setting for group level. But again, it really depends whether the current solution is sufficient to solve that specific problem. In that case, even self-instant administrator already have this ability of changing the default. And even on GitLab.com, we have that ability. So,
right.
And the follow-up question to that is, first, like, okay, so first is, does this solve the problem? And then is, do we want to disable shared runners on GitLab.com? Are we planning to do that?
I'm not sure about the impact that it would have. So I do need to have a discussion with Jackie, because it will definitely have an impact. And how would users react to that? Yeah, I think I need to dig deeper into the problem a little more. But I do understand like what you were trying to communicate. That has been resolved. But there is this next problem to understand the problem that we are trying to solve.
Yeah. And hopefully, this is acceptable and we don't have to do anything. In this case, we just can either close this issue, and if we decide to enable for GitLab.com, disable the setting for GitLab.com, we need to open a different issue for infrastructure, I think, like a production change. Right.
Okay, so we can decide on the next step once like we have a conversation with Jackie around this.
Okay.
I mean, I have meetings until 8. After that, I could try to put this on the issue, or if you want to go ahead and put this, I'll definitely share the recording for this meeting in the channel with her. Yeah, let's communicate async from now and see what next step to take.
Yeah. I'll add these 2 questions to the issue so we know like how to progress from there.
Sure. Thank you so much, Fabio.
Okay, no problem, Vitka.
Have a good day.
You too. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.